Hey, what's going on everybody? Boilon here, and today we have a very special video this morning. Some of you may have already seen what's going on, and I kind of wanted to report on it as well because, hey, why not? Everyone else is. And this video is going to take the place of a typical Blogs with Boilon Friday. And why is that? And that's because, well, Scopely did something that they haven't done in a while, and that's leak their own stuff. And so we have the full kits of the upcoming Knowhere team, and I actually have to say that I'm highly disappointed. I also realize that I'm on the wrong scene. It doesn't really matter. You guys know who I am. I'm really disappointed for a couple of reasons. So why am I starting here on Guardians of the Galaxy? And that's because, well, the movie's upcoming, and I finally bought my tickets, and I'll be going to see that on Monday. I know it's a couple days late, so please don't spoil the movie for me. Secondly is that we're not really getting any Guardians reworks, and that's heavily disappointing. So I was, and quite a few people actually, were expecting that we were going to be seeing reworks to Mantis, to Drax, to StarLord, regular StarLord, but no, and I kind of, it's funny really, because they made mention of this kind of stuff with the Invaders team, that we might see multiversal characters come to the game, with other teams. And yes, so it turns out that we have a full 5-man brand new team, 2 of which are existing characters in the game who are just alternate versions of those. And we'll kind of take a look at the kits, and we'll have the events for, there's going to be another event, by the way, coming pretty soon, and that'll be covered in the video. I think there's going to be a video tomorrow probably to cover this, the Interstellar Ignition, and probably tomorrow morning we'll talk about that. The event details will likely be in the blog, but other than that, I don't expect there to be a whole ton in the blog because everything's already been leaked, and that's what we're going to go over in today's video. So if you're ready to go, everybody, then let's boil this down. And this is why I wanted to have this set up. This is my full screen scene here, so we can take a proper look at the kit. So we're going to go through all the characters. You're going to get my thoughts on the characters, and I actually think that the kits are pretty bonkers. For better or for worse, I think this is the sort of Marvel Strike Force Power Creep 3.0 or the Great Reset 3.0 or whatever you want to call it, because the characters' kits are so large that it really, is really so much more than some of the other characters in the past. And this team, this Knowhere team, it is a war team. It's not necessarily a war offense or defense. You have that choice. But with some of the kits that we're going to get from Nova, who is the legendary that's coming in his own kind of like Scourge coming pretty soon this patch, it's going to be a bonkers defense as well. So I'm really scared about how this is going to impact Alliance War, which to be honest was kind of already a shit mode that I don't really care too much about anyways. But because this team has a legendary team, it's going to be one that you're going to want to build. It's probably going to have a lot of viability outside of War, because just like Omega Red did with Weapon X, I see the same thing happening, just even more so because these are even newer characters. Who knows, maybe you'll get some Cosmic Crucible defense value out of them as well. But anyways, I do want to start off with Cosmo because he is a really solid support character. He's also has the Guardians tag, which is interesting. So, I don't know what value you're really going to get out of these characters that have there is 2, him and StarLord, the new StarLord, has the Guardians tag on them. But I think a lot of this is more to do with the Gamma Raid than anything, because you're not going to be building these characters, for example. They're just hot garbage now, aside from Gamora, but the rest of them are hot garbage without any rework. They're not going to stand any test of time. But let's talk about the kits, because there's a lot here. So I want to go quick first to the passive. So the goodest girl, you guys know Cosmo the dog. They're going to be in the movie. So on spawn, gain immunity. This is crazy here. When an enemy attacks this character, apply offense down for 2 turns and bleed to that character. So kind of like a Groot-based passive where if they get hit. But that's really crazy. Offense down for 2 turns outside of War. That's pretty good. And this is a character that I'm heavily looking at for, say, Dark Dimension 6 Cosmic, who I think is going to have some pretty good value. In War, though, it does deal damage equal to 5% of Cosmo's max health when they get hit. So any ricochet attacks, any AoE, things like that will trigger this as well, which is great. While this character has deflect or minor deflect, lower the crit chance of all enemies by 50%. Now, a lot of these characters, they do have mechanics that basically, when they have deflect or minor deflect, which is the boost, by the way, in Alliance War, they do get additional kind of kit bonuses. Then, obviously, the resistance, which is actually pretty low, 20% resistance in War to self and the entire team. So let's take a look at the kit, though. Let's zoom in, because there's quite a bit here. So rough them up, the basic. What I like about these, though, is that every basic on most of the other characters have a chance to revive Korg, and in War it's a guaranteed. And by the way, if you don't know the characters, so it's going to be Cosmo, Korg, StarLord, the Annihilation StarLord version, Thor, Infinity War, and Nova. So we'll go over that one by one. Clear negative effects from 2 from self. Attack primary target for 360 plus clear 2 positive. So a pretty solid basic right there. But go fetch. Some of the kits is really good. And what I like as a support character is that it's not that tied to the Knowhere team. So attack primary and adjacent targets for 400% plus clear all positives. Clear 2 bleed and 2 random negative effects from self and all allies. Heal the most injured ally for 20%. So no specific Knowhere callout. What I didn't like about the characters, Captain Carter and Iron Fist from Invaders, is that they only healed their own team. So Cosmo does a little bit more. Apply deflect. Unfortunately, this is locked to Knowhere, but the rest of it's not really. In War, this just gets a ton of extra bonuses there. Zoomies. Fill this character by, this is funny because I have a dog too. Fill this character's speed bar by 5% plus 5% per Knowhere ally. So without the team, it's not going to get a ton of speed bar, but clear all negative effects from self and all allies. You're clearing negative effects from both skills. Clear all positive effects from all enemies. That's really cool too. Heal self and all allies for 25% of this character's max health. So that's a pretty big heal and a barrier of 10%. In War, this also applies safeguard to the Knowhere team and generates ability energy as well. So a pretty bulky kit just in general. It is on a higher cooldown though, so this is on an energy of 7 total. So I guess, outside of War, it is going to take longer, especially without other ways to get ability energy for this character. But I do like the fact that, he's a support... she? Is Cosmo a she? I don't even know. I'm not sure. But either way, a very solid cosmic support character, and a character I'm kind of looking out for potentially Dark Dimension 6 Cosmic, and also a bio character as well. So moving on to the next character, we have Korg, who is going to be bio as well. Hero Cosmic Bio Protector. And we're going to go through to his passive first, called Rock and Roll. So on spawn, apply defense up for 2 turns and 2 deflect to self and Knowhere allies. This is going to be really good because Korg is meant to die and revive and then keep triggering that on spawn effect of the defense up and 2 deflect. So that's going to be really good for the team. When a Knowhere ally drops below 50%, gain taunt and death proof. That's pretty common, basically a low health mechanic taunt. When this character has a deflect or minor deflect, lower the counterattack chance of all enemies by 100%. That's pretty good. And then 30% armor, but then 20% per deflect. And these deflects can stack up for quite a bit. So he's going to have an insane, assuming that his stats are good, he's going to have an insane amount of armor. And he's already gaining 30% as well to the rest of the team. There's additional armor in War. So he's just going to be an absolute wall, whether it's both in War and outside of War, in my opinion. On block, barrier self for 5%. So he's just gaining tons of barrier. He actually might be a really good character for a fortifier ISO. Let's rock. So that's his basic here. Attack primary target for 360% damage and apply slow for 2 turns. That's a pretty good ability too. Slow for 2 turns is pretty solid. And then he's gaining 2 deflect up to a maximum of 5. So 2 deflect and he's applying slow. Really, really cool there. His special, which is probably his turn 1 here. Attack primary and adjacent targets for 420%, plus apply slow for... So, again, lots of slow going on. If Nova is an ally, or with 2 or more Knowhere allies, so it could be either or, this attack does an additional 200% piercing to each target. So that's a lot. That's like 420 plus 200% piercing. So it can either be Nova standalone or 2 other Knowhere allies. Apply offense up for 2 turns to self and all Knowhere allies. So that's really good because that's going to be on turn 1. Apply more deflect to the team. Like, there's just so much deflect going up. This is going to be such a pain in the ass to fight for people who put them on war defense. Other than that, it's going to completely obliterate basically anything that you could possibly have on war offense. It's going to be the next Gamma, how Gamma was when they first came out. This is going to be just like this team, and it's going to be a headache on both sides. In war, reduce speed bar by 20% on primary and adjacent targets, and is unavoidable. So you're basically just taking the war stuff. It's not entirely in war, but the war is just so much more. Clear all positive, this is his ultimate, Rock Breaks Scissors. Clear all positive effects from the primary target. 550% damage to the primary target. Call 2 Knowhere allies with the highest damage. So that's probably going to be Thor and StarLord, Thor and Nova rather. These allies gain 30% extra damage for this attack. Apply defense up for 2, so there's so much crap just going around. Reduce speed bar by 30% on the primary target, and tons of extra focus on the ult. So this is going to land for sure. So, really good kit. Now, is Korg a character that I want to take to, say, Dark Dimension 6? I'm not sure, because there is a lot of callouts to the Knowhere team. So if you're not using a lot of Knowhere characters for this, then you may not get as much benefit. Whereas Cosmo, I would say, gets more benefit from a standalone usage if you're not using the wider team. And you guys know that you can't use Nova in Dark Dimension 6 standalone because there's that legendary lane. So moving on to the next character, though, we have Nova. So let's talk about Nova, but first, before we talk about Nova, I do have to go to the passive first, and we're going to kind of double back to the ultimate later. So the human rocket, on spawn, gain 1 charged. On spawn in war, though, gain 2 charged. And this can only trigger once per war. So this part here, so the 2 charge only happens once. Fill speed bar by self by 10% plus 15% for each Knowhere ally. So he's getting 70% speed bar on spawn. Absolutely bonkers. Apply evade and safeguard to self and all Knowhere allies on spawn as well. So that is really crazy. And this part is not once per war. That's just the charge part. The rest of it does happen every single on spawn war. On turn, clear 1 negative self effect from self and heal for 50. These kits are just so big. 15% of this character's max health. At the end of any turn, if he's charged and below 75%, clear heal block and heal for 50%. So he's just healing so much. And you'll see when we get to the Nova Force effect that there's just so much healing going on. Fill this character's speed bar by 25% and then lose 1 charge. So at least this is viable in other game modes because he does get the 1 charge too outside of War 2, which is really nice. 60% max health, and Knowhere allies gain 30%, and then they get even more in war. So he gets 90% in war, 90% additional max health, and the team gets 60%. For each charge on this character, gain 1,000% focus and 4,000% resistance. It's just absolutely insanity. While this character has deflect or minor deflect, the Knowhere team gets 20% block amount. So they're mitigating even more damage coming their way. While this character has charged in war, any Knowhere ally or self with safeguard cannot have trauma applied to them. And that is just crazy too. You know, so there's just, these kits are huge. While this character has 3 or more charge, stun cannot be applied to anywhere in the team. Now, I don't know how frequently he's going to have 3 charges, because that's quite a bit, unless you're getting a +2 charges. So it's only in war, like the first fight. But this is just crazy that he cannot be stunned, or nobody else on the team can be stunned. Absolutely crazy. So we need to go back to the original kit, though. It's just huge. Cosmic Beam. So that's his basic there. Attack primary and adjacent targets for 400% damage and clear 2 positive effects. In war, clear 4. Wow, it's just, it's a basic that does like adjacent damage, so it has the potential to do a lot of damage, and especially in Dark Dimension when enemies are clumped up. Apply 1 deflect up to a maximum of 5 to self and all Knowhere allies, and if that happens on a striker ISO, oh my god, there's just going to be so much going on. And then of course the Korg revive mechanic here. Special Nova Blast. In war, clear revive once from primary and adjacent targets. So what's insane about this is that this is the upgraded version of Red Hulk's special with the empowered bonus, and now he's already getting that with just the regular guy. Attack primary target and adjacent targets for 500%, flip defense up, and 2 random positive effects. Apply disrupt and heal block for 2 turns, and stun to the primary target. There's just so much. In war, apply trauma, and then he's also giving safeguard to the whole Knowhere team, and it's unavoidable. there's just everything under the sun. Trauma, safeguard, and now we have the Neutron Star alt, which is what gives him the Nova Force, and this is just absolutely wild. 700% damage AoE. That is just an insane value. Characters killed by this attack cannot be revived, and because Nova is a blaster, know that he's going to be doing a crap ton of damage. Clear all negative effects from self, bury yourself and all allies for 10% of his max health. It's not that much, 10% is not crazy, but you know, the more deflect, of course, because like everything does that. And then he clears a battlefield effect, which might be the Red Hulk if that is up. That's the only other battlefield effect. In war, apply 1 safeguard to self and all, +1 safeguard. So it's not even 1 safeguard, it's like +1 if you already have it. Apply speed up for 2 turns and speed bar by self, 20% for self and all Knowhere allies. Nova Force. Crazy, more deflect. On this character or any ally's turn, that character clears a negative effect and gains 2 deflect up to a max of 10. Now keep in mind that with Korg, he's getting armor, tons of armor per deflect. It's just, there's so much deflect stuff for the entire team. This is going to be an absolute nightmare turtle fest. I've said this before, but I can't stress enough how OP this is going to be. The next Heroes for Hire, but way worse in my opinion. For this character and each ally, when that character drops below 50% health, heal that character for 50% of max health. This can only happen once per match. So this is very similar to Nova's passive. This character and all allies gain 5% damage per deflect on that character with Nova Force. So you see this up to a max of 10 deflect? Yeah, okay. Try adding an extra 50% potential damage to each of the characters. It's just absolute insanity. And that is Nova. Like, he is going to be one of the best standalone characters that I've ever seen in some time. He is a blaster character. Most likely his stats are going to be insane. And he's a bio character. So hopefully that you've saved your bio gear so that when he does come out and when everyone gets him, that you can take him straight up to gear tier 17, because that's absolutely what you're going to want to do. Now, some of the other characters, there's StarLord Annihilation. This is kind of part of my disappointment that I mentioned about the Guardians, because now instead of upgrading the existing StarLord or any of the existing Guardians characters, now we're having to invest in this full team of new characters, including an alternate version of StarLord called StarLord Annihilation. And he is a skill character, so that's kind of interesting, and he's a brawler. So let's, again, go to the passive first. Ragtag Commander. In war, on spawn, apply offense down for 2 turns to all enemies. That's really good, but unfortunately tied to war. When this character or a Knowhere ally drops below 50% health, apply 1 evade up to a max of 5 to the most injured ally. Now, what's nice about this is it's not tied to war, so this is kind of like a Psylocke mechanic, because she adds those kind of buffs as well. And then with the deflect, you gain 50% accuracy for the Knowhere team. 50% focus for the whole team, and this is outside of war as well, but you get an additional 50% in war for 100%. Now his actual kick, though, flip shot, attack primary and adjacent targets for 360, so that's pretty good because it hits multiple targets, which is nice, and it applies vulnerable up to a max of 5, so that's a pretty solid basic attack, actually. Bullet spin. This is on a cooldown of 4. Apply blind for 2 turns to the primary target. Now, unfortunately, it's just that outside of war. In war, if Nova is an ally, clear immunity from the primary target first, and then you're applying a blind for 2 turns to the highest damage non-primary target. So a second target for 2 turns, which is good, but unfortunately not outside of war. Attack primary target and adjacent targets for 400, plus apply 2 more vulnerable. So lots of ways to get vulnerable on this character up to a max of 5, which is really, really great. 1,000 extra % focus for this attack in war, and it's unavoidable. So definitely lots of ways to get those vulnerables up on people early. Attack primary, the ultimate spray and pray. Attack primary and adjacent targets. So no AoE. It's just kind of adjacent targets here. For 440, plus apply 2 bleed for 2 turns and heal block for 2 turns. This is actually kind of boring. Actually, for an ultimate, this is for such a huge cooldown. This is a bit disappointing. I think that this is easily something that could be on a special somewhere, but the cooldown is very high. In war, it does apply trauma to each target with vulnerable, which is fine, but outside of war, this is pretty lackluster in my opinion. So my thoughts about StarLord Annihilation is that his kit is nothing crazy, especially outside of war. And I don't know if he's going to be necessarily a character that I'm going to want to take up to Dark Dimension 6. Just some early thoughts about that one. So let's move on to the final character, and that is going to be Thor Infinity War. He is a Mystic Brawler character. What's interesting, he does have the Avengers tag and the Asgardians tag alongside the Knowhere tag. So there might be some way that you might be able to theory craft some additional usage in here, potentially, maybe, until you get the full team online anyways. And also for raids, for Gamma. Odinson's Revenge. So this is his passive. We're starting here. On turn, heal self for 5% of max health and 5% of max health per non-minion Asgardian Avenger Knowhere. So this will be really good for, again, other game modes, but also where you need to use them, like in Gamma, potentially. On any enemy turn, 50% chance to attack the enemy protector with the highest speed, ignoring taunt for 250% piercing. But in war, this clears all charge. So this is really, really good. I can't stress that enough, that this is a pretty interesting attack, although it is specific to protectors, and I think that this was designed for a reason for a couple of characters, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, characters with charge mechanics, gain 25% damage as well, so he is going to have a pretty high damage stat. While this character has deflect and minor deflect, lower the block chance of all enemies by 50%. Now, in war, he is also giving 25% additional damage to himself and 50% to the team. So 50% for him, 50% for the team in war, but 25% outside of it. And characters with the damage passives typically are really good. Agent Venom, Bucky Barnes are the ones most recently that have damage passives. So his damage stat standalone is going to be most likely in the top 5 for sure. Let's look at the rest of his kit, though. So his basic Asgardian throw, that's probably some sort of hammer throw. I think he's going to be wielding Stormbreaker, the axe. So attack primary target for 340% piercing. What I like about his kit is that everything is piercing damage. Apply +1 defense down up to a max of 3. Clear 2 negative effects from himself. And then, of course, the Korg revive mechanic. His special, Thunder God's Wrath, attack primary target for 400% piercing. And if this character has 2 or more Knowhere allies, clear all positive effects from the primary target, and then apply ability block to the primary target. So I'm hoping that he doesn't need the Knowhere allies for this part, just for this part up here. Rebound chain to 3 adjacent targets for 400% piercing, so tons of piercing damage being chucked around, and then he attacks the most injured enemy again for 400. So there's a lot of damage being chucked around here. This attack cannot be counterattacked, and in war, it's unavoidable. It's on a cooldown of 4, which is really, really good for the amount of damage that it's probably going to be doing. His ultimate, again, just like StarLord's, very basic, very basic attack. So it has a cooldown of 7. It clears all barrier in war from all enemies, and then it does a 700% piercing damage attack. Apply offense down for 2 turns and defense down for 2 turns. So some really great debuffs here and a huge amount of piercing damage. It is on a cooldown of 7 though, so for things like Dark Dimension, hypothetically, it's going to be like a really big attack that you're going to want to save and use when you really need to. But despite that, I think he has a good chance of hitting Cosmic Dark Dimension 6 for me. I think of all of the characters that I would consider, I think going forward, depending on when Dark Dimension 6 is released, I'm most interested in Thor Infinity War, obviously Nova, not so much StarLord, and then I don't think Korg is going to make it, but obviously I will be building him for the team writ large, and then Cosmo. So the characters that I'm most excited for, Cosmo, Nova, and Thor, as far as maybe taking up to Gear Tier 18 for Dark Dimension 6. The rest of them I will probably use, at a Gear Tier 16 kind of level for the team, but I don't know how hardcore I'm going to be going into them. So crazy, crazy information here, and that's 5 of the characters coming this patch, and of course we have Gwenpool, who's going to be rounding out the new Warrior. So what do you guys think about this? There's a couple of things I'm a little bit disappointed in, and I think that we're gonna have more time to talk about that as the days goes on, but I just wanted to cover this so that in case anyone wanted my take on this, of the new characters that are coming, and hearing it from the Boilon perspective. I am really disappointed that I think this means that we're no longer going to be seeing a lot of reworks. I think that because the reworks don't make them money. Flat out, reworks don't make them money. And now they did do the reworks for the new Warriors, but I think that was kind of a one-off. I think when it comes to some of the older characters, we might still see some occasional reworks, but I think also seeing brand new full teams is going to be very, very likely. With the Invaders case, we had 4 new characters, so that was quite a few. Nick Fury was, a rare example here where we did get a rework, and his rework was really, really good. But nonetheless, I don't think that we're going to be seeing as many more reworks going forward, because Scopely needs to make more money, right? On the back of their latest deal with Savvy Games, they need to make sure that they're keeping those the dollar bills flowing. So that's it, everyone. Oops, I minimized my game by accident, but that is the end of the video, everyone. So we're not going to be doing atypical vlogs with Boilon Friday, and my apologies for that, but I honestly don't think that there's going to be much in there, because I think the majority of it is going to be this stuff that we just talked about today. And so if you keep all the way up to date for that, then we'll talk about more regarding the blog and the events coming this weekend, probably tomorrow morning when we go over the events from the blog. So that's it, everyone, and enjoy your weekend, and until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.